The morning he emptied our accounts, I still thought we were a normal family. Not perfect, not easy, but normal. I was standing at the kitchen counter with one sock on, the other sock missing, my coffee cooling beside the toaster, and my 8-year-old son asking me, very seriously, whether volcanoes could be considered a form of betrayal for his science project theme. I laughed. I actually laughed, because I didn't know betrayal was about to move into my house like a quiet tenant and take everything it could carry. My phone buzzed. Not a text, a bank alert. Balance below $500. I frowned, thumb hovering. That couldn't be right. We had just gotten paid. My paycheck hit on Friday. My husband's salary hit Monday. We'd finally been breathing again after a tight winter. I opened the app, expecting to see a glitch. A delayed deposit. Maybe a bill I forgot. Instead, the screen loaded and my stomach fell so hard it felt like my body forgot how to hold itself together. Checking. $17.42. $0 emergency fund. $0. I stared at the numbers until my eyes burned. Then I scrolled. Transfers. Large ones. Not one. Not two. A clean, brutal sequence. Online transfer out. $9,850. Online transfer out. $6,200. Wire transfer. $14,000. Zelle. $2,500. Cashier's check. $5,000. The words looked clinical, polite, like the bank was describing a weather forecast. But those lines weren't weather. They were our rent, our groceries, our childcare, our health insurance, the money that made our life possible. My fingers went numb. I refreshed the screen like it might reverse itself out of shame. It didn't. That was the legal and financial anchor. And it landed inside the first minute of my day with no mercy at all. Our joint accounts were empty, and the withdrawals weren't random fraud. They were executed cleanly, like someone who knew exactly what they were doing, and exactly how much they could take before the bank asked questions. Upstairs, the shower was running. My husband, Luke Bennett, was humming. He always hummed in the morning, like he was a man with nothing to hide. I stood there with my phone shaking in my hand and realized something terrifying. Luke hadn't left yet, but he had already taken the life out of the house. I didn't scream. Shock doesn't always scream. Sometimes it goes quiet, sharp, and cold. I walked to the pantry, opened the drawer where we kept our mortgage paperwork and bank documents, and pulled out the folder with our account numbers. Because my first instinct wasn't to accuse. My first instinct was to control the bleeding. I called the bank. A recorded voice thanked me for my patience, like patience was going to refill my savings. When a representative finally answered, her tone was calm, professional, like she had no idea she was about to become the person who told me my marriage was already over. "Thank you for calling Valley Horizon Bank," she said. "How may I help you?" "My accounts are empty," I said, and my voice sounded too steady for the words. "There are transfers I didn't authorize." There was typing, then a pause. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "these transfers were made using an authenticated login and confirmed by two-factor verification." Two-factor. My throat tightened. Two-factor was my phone, which meant either someone had my phone or someone had moved two-factor away from me. "Who initiated them?" I asked. The rep hesitated. "The account is joint," she said. "Both account holders have full authority. The transactions were initiated by Mr. Bennett's profile." My hands went cold. Mr. Bennett. Luke. My husband. My partner. The man who told me last night we should start planning a summer trip because we were finally stable again. You're telling me my husband emptied our accounts, I said. The rep's voice softened slightly. He transferred funds to an external account, she said, and requested cashier's checks at a branch yesterday afternoon. Yesterday afternoon, while I was picking up our son from school, while Luke said he was in meetings. Can you freeze the accounts? I asked. We can place a hold to prevent additional outgoing transfers, she said. But as a joint owner, Mr. Bennett can still access funds if deposits come in unless there is a legal order restricting him. A legal order. That's when it hit me. The bank wasn't going to save me. The bank wasn't my friend. The bank was a system. And Luke knew how systems worked. Because Luke worked in finance. He wasn't reckless with paperwork. He lived in paperwork. He knew exactly what a joint account meant. He knew exactly what he could do. And how fast he could do it. Before I even understood the rules of the game. I hung up and stared at the kitchen wall, while the shower upstairs continued its steady, careless sound. Then I did the first thing that would save me later. I documented, screenshots, every transaction, every timestamp, every confirmation number. Then I checked our credit cards. 2 were near limit. A third had a charge I didn't recognize, a moving company deposit, $1,200. My stomach turned. Moving company. Luke was moving. He didn't just take the money. He was preparing to disappear. The shower turned off. I heard his footsteps. I set my phone down on the counter like a weapon I wasn't ready to use yet. Luke walked into the kitchen in a crisp shirt, tie loosened, hair damp, smelling like confidence and soap. Morning, he said, reaching for the coffee pot like nothing in the world had shifted. I watched his hand, calm, steady, like it belonged to someone who didn't just drain a family's entire safety net. Luke, I said. He glanced at me, distracted. Yeah? Where's the money? I asked quietly. His hand paused on the coffee pot handle. For half a second, his eyes flickered. Not confusion, recognition. Then he did what Luke always did when he wanted to control a room. He smiled, not warm, not loving. A smooth smile. Okay, he said softly. I was going to talk to you. I felt my throat tighten. About what? I asked. About emptying our accounts. He exhaled like I was making the morning inconvenient. You're framing it dramatically, he said. It's temporary. Temporary, I repeated. Yes, he said. I moved it to protect it. Protect it. I stared at him. He continued, voice measured, like he was explaining a budget. There's an issue, he said. A situation at work. They're reviewing accounts. I didn't want our funds frozen. Your work is reviewing accounts, I said, so you emptied ours. Luke's smile tightened. I'm handling it, he said. This is what I do. What you do, I repeated, voice down low, is steal from your family. Luke's eyes hardened. Don't use language like that, he warned. What language should I use? I asked. Emergency transfer language? Dissipation language? Because from where I'm standing, you just took every dollar we had without telling me. Luke leaned forward slightly, voice dropping. I told you I would handle things, he said. If you're smart, you'll let me. If you're smart. That line hit me like a slap, because it wasn't about money. It was about power. He wanted me to feel stupid, small, out of my depth, so I'd stop asking questions, so I'd accept the void as normal. I looked at his face, still calm, still controlled, and I realized something that made my stomach twist. Luke wasn't panicking. He was executing. Where did you transfer it? I asked. Luke's jaw tightened. A secure account. In whose name? I asked. He shrugged. It doesn't matter. It matters, I said, voice steady now, because our rent is due, our daycare is due, our mortgage autopay is due, and right now our accounts are at $17. Luke's eyes flicked away. Then he said, I'll cover it. With what? I asked. With the money you took? Luke's smile returned, thin and sharp. You're emotional, he said, and that's exactly why I didn't want to tell you until I had it handled. Emotional. That word. Men like Luke love that word because it makes reality sound like a mood. I took a breath and said, Put it back. Luke's expression hardened. No, he said. No, I repeated, stunned. He set his coffee down with careful control, like he didn't want to spill evidence. I'm not putting it back, he said. Not right now. Luke, I whispered, that's our money. He looked at me like I was naive. It's liquid, he said, and I moved it. End of story. End of story. He had already written the ending in his head. The only question was whether I would accept my role in it. Upstairs, our son shouted, Mom, where's my backpack? Luke turned his head toward the stairs and softened his voice instantly. Buddy, it's by the door, he called. Then he looked back at me and his tone snapped cold again. I'm leaving, he said. We'll talk tonight. I watched him grab his keys. He paused at the door like he remembered he needed to look like a decent man. Don't do anything stupid, he said quietly. Then he walked out, and the house felt hollow. I stood there for a moment, hearing my own breathing. Then I moved, because the biggest mistake I could make was waiting for Luke to talk tonight. When someone empties accounts before leaving, they're not leaving room for conversation. They're leaving room for you to drown. I drove to the bank, not to beg, to gather facts. At the branch, the manager recognized my name because we'd been there together when we set up the emergency fund. Luke had been charming that day, joking about adulting, acting like the money was a shared promise. The manager's smile faded when I slid my ID across the desk. I need printed transaction records, I said, full details, and I need to know what cashier's checks were issued. The manager hesitated. The account is joint, she said gently. I'm aware, I replied. That's why I'm here. She printed statements. There were 3 cashier's checks, $10,000, $7,500, $5,000, payable to Luke Bennett, not to a landlord, not to a vendor, to himself. Then I saw the wire to a bank I didn't recognize, account number masked, a bank in Nevada. Nevada. My stomach tightened. Nevada wasn't random. Nevada is where people go when they want certain things to look different on paper. Luke had once joked that Nevada was the place where paperwork goes to forget. At the time, I laughed. Now I felt sick. I asked, Can you tell me the name on the receiving account? The manager shook her head. Not without a subpoena, she said. Subpoena. That word again. The system was telling me, over and over, the same thing. If I wanted protection, I needed law. Not hope, not a conversation. I left the bank and sat in my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel. Then I called the one person Luke always said we didn't need. A lawyer. Her name was Camille Hart. I'd met her once at a school fundraiser. She'd laughed easily, but her eyes were sharp. The kind of woman who didn't get charmed by suits. When she answered, I heard typing in the background, like she was already doing something important. Camille Hart, she said. My husband emptied our accounts, I said, this morning. He transferred everything out and issued cashier's checks to himself. I think he's leaving. Camille didn't gasp. She didn't say, "Are you sure?" She said, "How much did he take?" That question grounded me like a hand on my shoulder. "About 37,000, I said. "Maybe more. And there's a wire to Nevada." Camille's voice sharpened. "Okay," she said. "Listen to me. Today matters. Hours matter. We need an emergency motion in family court for temporary restraining orders, financial, so we can't dissipate more assets, open new credit, or hide funds." "I'm not divorced," I said, voice shaking. "We haven't even—" "Doesn't matter," Camille said. "You can file for legal separation or divorce today and request emergency orders. Judges take account draining seriously." Then she said the sentence that changed my whole body. "And if he moved money to avoid obligations, we can ask for sanctions and reimbursement. But you need documentation, and you need to move fast." Move fast. I already was. Camille told me to do 4 things immediately. Open a new bank account in my name only. Reroute my paycheck. Change every password. Freeze my credit. "And don't confront him again," she added. "Not alone. He's already shown you he's willing to weaponize access." Weaponize access. That was exactly it. Luke hadn't punched me. He hadn't screamed. He had simply used the fact that he could, and he did. That afternoon, I opened a new account. I rerouted my paycheck. I moved what little cash I had, legally mine, to the new account. I froze my credit. Then I went home and changed passwords for everything. Bank logins, email, utilities, mortgage portal, school accounts. When I tried to log into our mortgage portal, my heart stopped. The email on file had been changed. Not mine. A new email I didn't recognize. Luke had already started rewriting the contact trail, the way a person does when they don't want you to find the notices until it's too late. I called the mortgage servicer and verified my identity. "Someone changed the email," I said. "Restore it." The representative said, "Changes were made yesterday afternoon." Yesterday afternoon, while Luke was in meetings, I restored the email, added 2-factor, and asked if there were any late notices. The rep paused. "There is a pending payment reversal," she said. Reversal. My stomach turned. "What does that mean?" "It means the auto-pay schedule was canceled," she said. "If the payment isn't received by the 15th, the loan will be delinquent." Delinquent. I felt like the floor tilted. Luke didn't just take the money. He canceled the mortgage payment. He wanted the house to become a threat. He wanted me afraid. He wanted me to feel the clock. That night, Luke didn't come home. No text, no call. At 11:18 p.m., my phone buzzed. A single message. "I need space. Don't contact my office. I'll reach out when I'm ready." I stared at the screen. Space. He took the money, then asked for space like space was what he deserved. I didn't respond. I saved it. Camille told me to save everything. The next morning, I woke up to another bank alert. A new transfer attempt. It failed because I'd changed passwords and placed holds, but the attempt was there. Luke was still trying, still reaching, still believing he had access. I drove to Camille's office with a folder of printed statements, screenshots, and that single text message like it was a confession. Camille filed for divorce that morning, not because I wanted to say the word, because I needed the court to have jurisdiction to protect my finances and my child. Camille also filed an emergency motion for temporary restraining orders. Financial TRO. Exclusive use of the home. Temporary custody schedule. An order compelling Luke to disclose where the money went. and an order preventing him from transferring, hiding, or dissipating marital assets. The hearing was set within days. Luke was served at his office. He called me immediately. His voice was calm. Too calm. "You filed," he said. "Not a question. A statement." "Yes," I replied. His tone softened like he was talking to a confused customer. "You didn't need to do that," he said. "You're making this ugly." "You made it ugly when you emptied our accounts," I said. Luke sighed. "You're panicking," he said, "and you're going to regret it." Regret. That word was meant to scare me. I kept my voice steady. "Bring the money back," I said. Luke laughed low and sharp. "You really think you can tell me what to do now?" he murmured. Then his tone changed, cold. "I moved it because I had to," he said, "and I'm not putting it back just because you're having feelings." Feelings. Again. He wanted me to feel ridiculous for being robbed. "I'm not having feelings," I said. "I'm having consequences, and so are you." Luke paused. Then he said, "If you keep pushing, the bank will look at you too. Remember, you're on the accounts. Everything is shared." There it was. The threat dressed up as legal reality. Luke wanted me to fear being implicated, fear being dragged down with him, so I would stop. I didn't stop. Because Camille had already explained something to me that Luke didn't expect me to know. In divorce court, money you drain before leaving can be treated as dissipation, marital waste, and judges can claw it back in the final division. He couldn't just disappear it without consequences. Not if I could prove the pattern. The escalation came in layers over the next week. First, Luke stopped paying anything. Utilities, childcare, even our son's after-school program. Bills started bouncing. I got a late notice from the daycare director. Embarrassed, gentle. I felt shame rise in my chest, and then anger. Luke wasn't just leaving. He was trying to collapse my life so I'd be too busy surviving to fight. Then a credit card company called. A missed payment, a balance that had doubled. I pulled the statement and saw charges I'd never made. A hotel in Las Vegas, a steakhouse, a luxury boutique, Vegas, the Nevada wire. My stomach turned. He hadn't moved the money to protect it. He had moved it to spend it somewhere I couldn't reach. I forwarded everything to Camille. Camille hired a forensic accountant. Her name was Elena Cortez. Elena didn't care about Luke's reasons. She cared about numbers, timelines, trails. She requested subpoenas for bank records, wire details, cashier's check negotiation, and any external account receiving funds. Meanwhile, the first hearing arrived. Luke showed up in a tailored suit with a calm smile, like he was stepping into a board meeting. He brought an attorney who looked expensive. Luke sat at the table like he wasn't the man who left me with $17. The judge, a woman with tired eyes and a voice that cut clean, looked at both sides. Camille presented the bank statements, the cashier's checks payable to Luke, the wire to Nevada, the canceled mortgage auto pay, the text message, "I need space." Camille didn't dramatize. She said, "Your Honor, he drained marital accounts without notice and left the household unable to pay basic expenses for the minor child. We request immediate financial restraining orders and temporary support." Luke's attorney argued it was his money too. Luke said calmly, "I moved funds to prevent them from being frozen due to an issue at work. I intended to pay bills." The judge looked at him. "Mr. Bennett," she said, "you emptied accounts and did not inform your spouse. You canceled mortgage payment, and you issued cashier's checks to yourself. That is not standard bill-paying behavior." Luke's smile tightened. The judge granted temporary orders. Luke was restrained from further transfers. He was ordered to provide full financial disclosures within 14 days. He was ordered to pay temporary support. He was ordered to restore funds sufficient to cover essential expenses. Luke walked out of court and hissed under his breath as he passed me. "You're going to regret humiliating me." I didn't answer. Because his humiliation was not my emergency. My emergency was keeping my child's life stable, while a man with access tried to implode it. The next escalation came from Luke's work. I got an email from an HR address I didn't recognize. It was forwarded accidentally, like someone had hit reply all without thinking. It referenced internal investigation, unauthorized client transfers, and regulatory reporting. My throat tightened. Luke hadn't moved our money to protect us from being frozen. He moved it because he thought his own accounts might get seized. He was hiding from consequences, and he used our family funds as his lifeboat. Elena subpoenaed the receiving bank on the Nevada wire. The response came back. The account was in the name of an LLC, Bennett Consulting Group, LLC. My stomach turned. Bennett Consulting Group was Luke's side project, the one he claimed made a little extra, the one he said wasn't significant. But he had an LLC account, and he was funneling marital money into it. That made it easier to claim it was business. That made it harder for me to touch. Or so he thought. Elena traced the cashier's checks. All 3 had been deposited, not into the LLC, into an individual account at another bank, in Luke's sister's name, Sabrina Bennett. My hands shook when Camille told me. "His sister," I whispered. Camille nodded. "He's parking funds with a third party," she said. "Classic. We'll subpoena her too." Luke wasn't just leaving. He was building a wall. Family, LLCs, Nevada, casinos. He was trying to scatter money into places that would take time to reach, hoping I'd give up from exhaustion. The court gave him 14 days to disclose. He produced a disclosure packet that was incomplete. A list of accounts with balances that didn't match known transfers. A claim that the money was spent on necessary expenses. A vague story about legal fees and business stabilization. Elena compared his disclosures to subpoenaed bank records and said flatly, "He's lying." Camille filed a motion to compel, then a motion for sanctions, then a motion for contempt. Luke responded by escalating in a different direction. He filed first for custody. He claimed I was unstable, hostile, alienating. He claimed he left because the home was emotionally unsafe. Emotionally unsafe. The phrase made me laugh out loud when Camille read it. Not because it was funny, because it was so calculated. He was trying to paint himself as the victim, because victims get sympathy, and sympathy can soften judges. But the judge wasn't reading his feelings. She was reading the bank statements. Then the twist arrived. The real twist, the one that turned, he emptied our accounts into something darker and more strategic than I'd imagined. It came in the form of a letter from the county recorder, a notice about a recorded document, a quitclaim deed. My heart stopped. I drove to the recorder's office with my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my ID. When I pulled the document, my throat closed. A quitclaim deed had been recorded 2 weeks earlier, transferring my interest in our home to Luke. My name was on it. My signature was on it, not an e-sign, a scanned signature, my signature, only it wasn't mine. It was close enough to pass at a glance, close enough for someone who wanted to move fast, close enough to steal a house. My stomach went numb. because now I understood the full shape of Luke's plan. He didn't just drain accounts to leave me scrambling. He wasn't just hiding money before he left. He was trying to take the house too, trying to strip me financially, then claim legal ownership, then file custody motions to pressure me into surrender. A clean trap. Money gone. House gone. Then he'd offer me a settlement from a position of strength, like a man giving charity, when it was really my own life being handed back in pieces. Camille's face went very still when I showed her the quitclaim deed. "This is a felony if it's forged," she said quietly, "and it's also grounds for emergency relief." Emergency relief meant we moved even faster. Camille filed a civil action to set aside the deed, a quiet title claim. She filed a liis pendens, public notice that the title was disputed. She filed an emergency motion in divorce court for exclusive occupancy, prevention of sale, an immediate injunction against Luke transferring or encumbering the home. She also filed a police report for forged instrument and identity theft. Because once someone touches real property with fraud, the system starts paying attention. Luke didn't like that. He called me from a block number the night the police report was filed. His voice was low, furious, controlled. "You crossed a line," he said. I sat at my kitchen table, my son asleep upstairs, and I felt something solid in my chest. "No," I said. "You did. You're trying to ruin me," he hissed. "You emptied our accounts," I replied. "You forged a deed. You hid money with your sister. You wired funds to Nevada. I'm not ruining you. I'm documenting you." Luke's breathing turned heavy. Then he shifted to the voice he used when he thought he could still control me. Soft, almost gentle. "Listen," he said. "We can settle this privately. I'll give you money. I'll sign something. But you need to stop making it criminal." "Stop making it criminal?" Like I had invented the crime. "You made it criminal when you signed my name," I said. Silence. Then anger surged again. "You don't know what you're doing," he said. "Those courts, they're slow. You'll burn money. You'll lose anyway." There it was. The inevitability pitch. The idea that fighting was pointless. The idea that I should accept my losses and move on. But Elena's work had already shown me something. Luke was careful, but not perfect. He left trails, and trails become chains when you gather enough of them. Elena subpoenaed the notary, listed on the quitclaim deed. Notary logs are supposed to be sacred. The notary responded with an affidavit. She stated she had notarized Luke's signature, but she had not notarized mine. Not only that, her logbook showed Luke had brought a previously signed document and asked her to notarize both signatures. She refused for mine and only stamped what she witnessed. But the recorded deed, the one on file, showed both notarizations, which meant someone altered it after the notary, altered it, then recorded it. That wasn't just fraud. That was manipulation of public record. Elena traced the digital metadata of the deed copy Luke had submitted in discovery. The file creation timestamp didn't match his story. The scan originated from an office printer network, Luke's office, a network with a known IP range, not our home. Luke wasn't just leaving, he was manufacturing evidence. Camille filed this with the court. The judge's response was swift. She signed an emergency injunction, preventing any transfer of the home. She ordered the county recorder to flag the title as disputed pending hearing. She also ordered Luke to appear for a contempt hearing. Luke's attorney tried to postpone. Denied. Luke, for the first time, looked rattled. And when Luke got rattled, He made the mistake he'd been avoiding. He got sloppy. 2 days later, Elena received subpoena returns from Luke's sister's bank. The funds Luke had parked with Sabrina had been moved again. Not spent. Moved. Transferred to a new account in the name of a trust. The Bennett Family Trust. Settlor: Luke Bennett. Trustee: Sabrina Bennett. Beneficiary: LB. Luke was trying to hide money under family trust language, but the trust was created after he emptied the accounts, after he filed custody motions, after he forged the deed, which made it look less like planning and more like concealment. Concealment is a word judges understand. Camille presented the trust transfers at the contempt hearing. Luke arrived with his calm face again, but it didn't fit as well. The judge reviewed the bank statements, the notary affidavit, the altered deed, the trust transfers. Then she looked directly at Luke. "Mr. Bennett," she said, "this court issued temporary orders for disclosure and support. Instead, you have engaged in deliberate concealment of marital funds and attempted to alter title records." Luke's attorney began to speak. The judge held up a hand. "No," she said, "I am speaking." Then she said the sentence that shifted the power in the room so hard I felt it in my bones. "I am referring this matter for criminal investigation," she said, "and I am ordering immediate repayment of marital funds under court supervision." Luke's face drained of color. His calm was gone. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because for the first time, the system wasn't listening to his voice. It was listening to the paper. The power reversal began right there. Not because I suddenly became stronger, but because Luke's choices created a record he couldn't charm away. The court ordered Luke to return $25,000 immediately into an escrow account controlled by attorneys. He was ordered to pay emergency household expenses. He was ordered to pay attorneys' fees. He was ordered to produce complete records, every account, every transfer, every device used for banking. He was ordered to surrender his passport pending further hearing due to risk of flight. Risk of flight. The words felt surreal, like my marriage had become a crime documentary. Luke called me that night, his voice thin. "You're doing this to punish me," he said. I stared at the wall, exhausted. "No," I said quietly. "You did this because you thought you could." He swallowed. "I was protecting myself," he whispered. "And who was protecting our son?" I asked. Silence. Then his voice turned sharp, because when Luke couldn't control with charm, he tried anger. "You're going to lose everything anyway," he hissed. "You're going to drown in legal fees. You'll beg me to settle." I didn't answer, because I didn't need to argue with a man who had already been caught altering a deed. I needed to keep collecting facts. Elena uncovered the Vegas trail, casino transactions tied to the Nevada account, hotel charges, luxury purchases. But the most devastating detail wasn't that Luke spent money. It was why he had to move it so fast. Elena found it in a subpoena response from Luke's employer. Luke was under investigation for misappropriation of client funds. Not proven, but investigated. And if his accounts were frozen, he needed liquidity to survive. So he drained ours. He wasn't protecting us. He was protecting himself. And he tried to take the house because the house was the biggest asset he could flip into cash, the easiest collateral, the easiest leverage. Camille used this information carefully because allegations about work investigations can be tricky, but she didn't need to accuse. She only needed to show motive. Luke emptied accounts right before leaving. Luke filed custody motions immediately after. Luke forged a deed. Luke created a trust. Luke moved funds repeatedly after court orders. Motive and pattern. The criminal investigation moved quietly but steadily. Detectives requested signature samples. They requested electronic device logs. They requested surveillance footage from the bank branch where cashier's checks were issued. The footage showed Luke at the counter, calm, smiling, signing the request. The bank teller later gave a statement. Luke asked if his wife would be notified. When told she could see it in online banking, he said, "She doesn't check. I handle it." He said it like a joke. He said it like he owned my attention. That sentence made my stomach turn when Camille read it aloud, because it wasn't just theft. It was contempt. The final hearings came like waves: custody, property injunction, financial division. Luke's attorney tried to frame me as unstable. They claimed I was overreacting. They claimed the quitclaim deed was a misunderstanding. They claimed the trust was family planning. But every time they tried to float the room into vagueness, Camille dropped another document on the table. Notary affidavit, metadata, bank transfers, escrow repayment orders, failed disclosure, trust creation date, Vegas spending. And then Luke's own message: "Don't do anything stupid." The judge looked at that message for a long time. Then she looked at Luke. "That is not a message from someone trying to co-parent," she said. "That is a message from someone attempting to intimidate." Luke's custody request collapsed. Supervised visitation was ordered temporarily, then later adjusted to structured visitation with strict financial compliance requirements. Because the court didn't just see Luke as a husband who left. The court saw him as a man who weaponized money to destabilize the mother of his child. The civil action to set aside the deed moved fast once the notary and recorder evidence was filed. The court declared the deed void. The title was restored, and the county recorder recorded the order publicly, like a stamp on Luke's lie. Recorded, stamped, official. That's the sound of power shifting. The remaining money Luke tried to hide in the trust was clawed back through court orders. Sabrina tried to claim she didn't know. The judge wasn't cruel, but she was clear. If you hold marital funds as trustee, you have obligations, she said. Ignorance is not a shield. Sabrina returned a portion. The rest was traced into accounts Luke used for Vegas spending and legal retainers. Luke had paid his attorney with marital funds. The judge ordered that portion credited back to me in final division. Dissipation, marital waste, sanctions. Words that sound boring until they put food back on your table. The criminal side concluded quietly. Luke was charged, not with some dramatic Hollywood list, but with what mattered. Forgery related to the deed, attempted filing of false instrument, and in connection with the bank transfers, depending on jurisdiction, theft or fraudulent concealment. Cared about his image. But admissions go cared about his image. But admissions go into records. Records follow you. And Luke had spent years believing records were tools he controlled. Now they were the chain around his ankle. The final divorce judgment was the last page in a file that felt thicker than my entire marriage. I was awarded the house. Not because the judge pitied me, because the judge found Luke's conduct endangered the child's stability and showed deliberate attempts to deprive me of access to marital assets. Luke was ordered to pay restitution and attorney's fees. The money returned through escrow helped stabilize our lives, but it didn't erase the months of panic. Still, the power reversal was real, because Luke didn't leave as the man who handled everything. He left as the man who got caught. And I didn't win because I screamed louder. I won because I did what he never expected me to do. I treated his charm like background noise, and I treated his paperwork like evidence. Months later, when the dust finally settled enough that I could breathe without scanning my bank app every 10 minutes, my son asked me a question while we were packing his lunch. "Mom," he said softly, "did Dad take our money because he didn't love us?" I froze, because kids ask the truth in the simplest way, and the simplest way hurts. I knelt beside him and put my hands on his small shoulders. "No," I said gently. "He took it because he made bad choices and tried to avoid consequences. That's not your fault. And it's not because you weren't enough." My son looked down at his sandwich like it was the most serious object in the world. Then he nodded. And in that moment, I realized the real victory wasn't the court order or the restored title. It was that Luke didn't get to rewrite our child's understanding of safety. He didn't get to teach him that love is something that disappears when it's inconvenient. Because I refused to let the ending be Luke's. Here's what I learned. The lesson Luke never wanted me to learn. When someone empties accounts before leaving, they're not just leaving. They're trying to control the story after they're gone. They're trying to make you too broke to fight, too ashamed to speak, too exhausted to file. They're betting on your silence. They're betting on you not knowing the difference between joint account authority and marital dissipation. They're betting on you waiting for a conversation. But conversations don't reverse wires. Hope doesn't stop cashier's checks. And trust doesn't protect you when the person you trusted is using access like a weapon. What protects you is action. Records, screenshots, printed statements, emergency orders, freezing credit, rerouting paychecks, calling the bank manager instead of crying in the pantry, calling the lawyer instead of calling your husband again. And the hardest part, the part that feels like swallowing glass, is accepting that the person who emptied the account isn't going to be moved by your pain. They'll only be moved by consequences. Now my bank alerts still buzz sometimes, but when they do, I don't flinch the way I did that morning. I check them. I verify. I document. Because I learned something in the cruelest way possible. Stability isn't something you assume because you're married. Stability is something you protect. Even from the person who once promised to protect it with you. Luke thought he could drain our life and leave me standing in the kitchen with one sock on, too shocked to move. He thought I'd collapse. He thought I'd beg. He thought I'd settle. But I didn't. I built a file. I built a case. And I built a wall between my child's future and his father's sabotage. The day he emptied our accounts, he believed he was ending the story on his terms. But the day the judge stamped the order restoring my title, the day the escrow funds returned under court supervision, the day the record showed, in plain black ink, what he did, that was the day Luke realized something he never expected. He could take the money, but he couldn't take the truth. And once the truth is filed, once it's stamped, once it's recorded, it doesn't matter how calm he sounds. It doesn't matter how confident he looks. The system stops rearranging itself around his version of events and starts correcting itself around yours.